for joining me today. It's a pleasure to have you and see you again. For people who are watching that don't know, I actually met Andrea, what was it, a year, 2 years ago?
Yeah, a year ago. Yeah.
Yeah, about a year ago. Time's flying. But we met here in Houston. You were going through your generator Italian cohort while I was going through my G Beta generator cohort at the same time. So we got to meet here in Houston, become fast friends, and learn about what you were working on. And it's great to kind of keep up with your progress on LinkedIn and see what you've been up to. But I'll pass the mic off to you and give us the introduction and give us the elevator pitch of SMACE.
Thanks to you, Grant. It's a pleasure to be here. As Grant mentioned, I'm Andrea Droghetti, co-founder and CEO of SMACE, which stands for Smart Working a Smart Place. Basically, SMACE is building the booking.com for corporate offsites in the most briefly version of an elevator pitch. So just to dive in a little bit, we built a platform, just B2B, which corporate use to plan their offsites. So basically, our clients get in touch with us, and they go through a process which basically, as an output, gives them some possibilities, some options among which to choose for the best planning of their offsite. And so we are basically the meeting point in between corporates and their offsite needs, and all the providers, which basically are the venues, so the places where the offsite is taking place, with the meeting rooms, accommodation, and all the several providers involved. So the provider which is providing food and beverage, the ones for team building activities, anything in this area, let's say, yeah.
I like it. All right. Well, give me the origin story. Why did this start? And especially when it comes to entrepreneurs, it's always I saw this problem and I created the solution for. I wanted to be the one to create the solution. So how did you start with this problem?
Yeah, so basically, me and my co-founder Marta, we were very new resources, let's say, in the work environment. We were both employee in two very big consultancy firms. She was in Accenture and I was in Capgemini, which I don't know how famous is in the US, but is a pretty big consultancy firm in Europe in technology. So we basically were hired 1 year previously of COVID. In the year previously of COVID, we were working every single day in the office, but most of the days we were going there just to be there. But this wasn't really giving an added value to be, in the corporate office. So we basically during COVID fell in love with the concept that someone could do a great job also if he wasn't exactly in the corporate office space. Basically the best thing to do was to find an equilibrium, let's say, in between the days to go to the office and the days that you could have been working from home, or more in general, from wherever you thought it was the most productive way to work. And so basically we thought to found a platform always for corporates, B2B also in the origin, but where the goal was that a corporate client was giving a credit to their employees, and their employees could have chosen among some options where to do workation. So workation basically is the fusion in between the words work and vacation. So it was the concept about working perfectly in amazing places. The thing is that, so this was what made us started. So basically the idea that happier people would have made more productive companies, also because they were much more engaged. Companies...
One sec, let me ask this. So you say corporate offsite, and here in America, we hear corporate offsite as like a retreat, or like your company going for 1 week together to, go skiing or do these different things. Explain the difference. It sounds like yes, you can have your company there, but if me, you, and your co-founder all work at different companies, we could potentially work at the same offsite area together. Is that right? Or am I mishearing that?
No, it's right. Although our customers mainly are doing what you call a retreat, so it's kind of a synonymous for us of site and retreat. Just
Gotcha.
to be very punctual, we started from the idea of doing working retreats, working offsites. So if the retreat is just for leisure, so you are just going all together as a team skiing, is not the idea at the basis of SMACE. Basically,
Gotcha.
we try to provide always retreats in which the basic element is the meeting room. And from there on, you can build everything on that. So adding overnight staying, food and beverage, transportation, team building activities. You can also go skiing. But you know what I mean? Somehow you gotta go be there for working. This is just because we're differentiating ourselves in a strong way in comparison to some other competitors. Some are based in the EU and some in US. And it's that when you travel with SMACE, your team is completely sure that where they are going with SMACE, they will be able to work perfectly. So they will find amazing meeting rooms, very good spaces to work, and the perfect internet connection. This is something that typically the other startups which are making retreats don't really focus on.
I like it. Thank you very much for clarifying that. No, that makes perfect sense. It's exactly what I was asking. All right. Tell me, before we get into kind of some of the pitch deck questions, I want to hear about your kind of first sale, your validation. Tell me the origin story. That's always the fun one, is converting over from I have the idea, I've built the initial, maybe website or initial product, and then it's taking that huge leap of getting the first sale. Who's going to be the first big believer in what you're doing? So tell me about that.
Yeah, this is a nice story. So basically, a part of some first sales to individuals, which was very much in line with our first concept of workation. Then there was a local company based in Italy. It was a luxury company. They were, let's say, an e-commerce website specialized in luxury clothes and so on. They needed to plan an offsite, but a working one again. So they needed to have a perfect connection, a very good meeting rooms, and in the afternoon to make some activities like team buildings to strengthen the bonding among the people of the team. And they really didn't know how to do this. So they told us, we know that you have some venues, some places perfect for work, but it's not for individuals. In this case, it's for the whole group. Can you manage to do that? So this was something that was not manageable by the platform. So we did it all like manually, but it was super cool. And indeed, we found out that the ticket was much more interesting and the revenues of it were much higher than everything else that we had been doing till that moment. And that was the first time that we thought maybe we should keep in mind that this is a very more profitable area. And then we switched totally to this area of business. Yeah.
I like it. The first pivot.
Yeah, exactly.
I like this word because it really is like we had an idea, we went after it, we started getting a few individual sales, and then we got this big opportunity and said, hey, wait a minute. You took a pivot to that.
This is much more interesting.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's part of entrepreneurship. I love it. All right. So you got your validation. Tell me about your TAM. Tell me about how big you think this market is and who are kind of your competitors you're fighting over for this.
Yeah, so more in general, as you mentioned, basically, we are in the area of retreats, which on their own are in the overall industry of MICE. So it stands for meetings, incentives, conventions, and events. It's a very B2B area, very, very broad. It goes from the leisure retreat to the specific meeting. And it's a huge industry. It's slightly more than $1 trillion industry with a pretty good growth rate. Yeah, it's not many people know about it, but it's a really huge industry. which has gone through a pretty good growth rate after COVID. As you know, always more people don't work together anymore. I mean, on a daily basis. So companies really need to plan, let's say quarterly on average, these meetings to make colleagues that don't meet each other every day, but to make them meet, and possibly to make them meet in a very good place, so that they can be happy there, so that they can spend quality time together. So this is the area where we are in. And the other interesting thing is that this is a very old processes based market, as basically this kind of events are managed mainly from travel agencies, which are still working, you know, as they did in the 80s or 90s. And this is also due to the fact that Booking.com or Airbnb, if you try to do that, they won't really manage a group larger than 10 people through their classical process, because basically this is all a technological matter. So when you are booking 1 or 2 rooms, Booking.com connects to the channel manager of the venue and is able to give you live the availability and the exact price of those 2 rooms. But when it goes to managing something like 100 rooms, there is no such system. It's not possible, basically. And that's why this area of the overall travel tech industry has still so much to be technologized and improved. So the overall opportunity is this. And we started from the very precise segment of the working of sites.
Perfect. So you're in Italy right now, but what other countries within Europe and elsewhere are you in right now?
So we are having customers from several countries. I mean, some customers are from the US, mainly US customers, which also have operations in Europe. So they use our basis to come here, as long as French, UK, and German customers. While our venues are mainly in Italy, some of them are in Spain and some in Greece.
Nice. I like it. You're all over the EU. All right.
A little bit, yeah.
Let me ask you this. So, yeah, for especially the American audience, what have been some of the challenges that you face kind of going cross borders? I know in the EU, a lot of the laws, they tend to be very similar, but you know, some countries have slight changes on like property and how you can use it and things like that. So what have some of the challenges been when crossing the border from Italy to France, Spain, Germany? And have you come up against any sort of legal problems? Not like somebody suing you, but you know, hey, you can't, you know, you here in the US, you can only use certain buildings or certain areas of town for certain designations. So have you come up against problems like that in different countries, or what?
We feared this, but to be completely honest, this is not being an issue at the moment, as in this specific area, which is overall, again, very much connected to travel and tourism. It's an area which has been adapted to the fact that it's an international area since so many years. So there is not very much an issue in this regards. I would say that the main issue within the EU stays the language problem. So every time that we go to a different country, I mean, English is a known language, but it's never the main one. So this is the huge difference, I believe, in between US and EU. So we could even say that laws are kind of more similar in between the EU states than in between the US states. But there is this huge language problem for which if we have all our contents in English and in Italian, when we go to Germany or to France, we have to have everything perfectly translated in the country language. And this obviously creates an issue, also because the customer support still has to speak the origin country language, and for a little startup, this is a big cost. So this is the main issue for sure.
Makes perfect sense. I like it. All right. So we've talked a lot about SMACE, and we love to hear it, all the success you guys have had. So we know where you're at now. What's the plan moving forward? What's the plan for the next 12 months? Are you planning on raising a round? Are you planning on moving it into new countries, or just adding new spaces as you continue to grow? What's the plan?
The really main challenge that we have is to become fully scalable. What I mean is that at the moment, our operations are 50% automatic and 50% manual. Within June, we will become, as SMACE, as a company, 100% automatized, so fully scalable. And overall, the process will be 80% autonomous. What I mean is that there will still be a need for our partner to give some inputs about, again, availabilities and exact prices.
Yeah.
So this is the main challenge for 2024, while for 2025, always in these regards, will be to basically connect to all the several channel managers of our venues, and to provide our clients the experience of having instantaneously, so live, the chance of seeing the availabilities of the venues and their exact prices. So this is for sure our main challenge. Why we will have to keep growing on our capillarity, let's say, of our partners and the venues on the territory. And in this regards, we are planning a new funding round at the beginning of 2025. Yes.
Nice. Will this be seed, A, B?
I would call it a seed plus round, as basically we had a pre-seed round before of coming in the US. Then we basically postponed our seed round as we received a lot of grants. So we don't really need funds at this moment. But we believe when the technology will be fully ready, as it's going to be, we will need some money to fasten the process of expansion globally.
I like it. All right, last question on SMACE before I want to shift gears and talk more about entrepreneurship in Italy and the EU. But tell me, what was the first place that you guys ever kind of rented out? What was the first big venue that you rented to that first company? And what's your current favorite place that you have rented out? Or
Wow. The first one is pretty easy. I remember that it's an amazing place nearby Bologna. This kind of castle, which was not totally rebuilt, but very much renewed and made really perfect for both leisure and meetings. So it has several spaces, something like 4 swimming pools among the hills, seeing the seaside. It's a really wonderful place. And that's where the first SMACE offsite happened. While talking about our favorite venue, this is really hard because we have so many amazing places. It's not just to be convenient. It's because really I was talking about that with the colleagues in the last days. But I believe that the most special place, let's say, it's a venue in Tuscany, which is called Villa Petriolo. And it is fully autonomous on every aspect. So they have a water surgeon within the venue. All the electricity produced is produced within the venue, with the solar panels and so on.
Okay.
Everything is fully recycled. The grains grows there. The tree, everything grows there. It's really
it's a fully self-sufficient.
It's a fully self-sufficient place, beautiful, in an amazing landscape, and it's surely the most catchy, let's say.
Nice. If you have any pictures of those places, please send them. I'd love to put them in here while we're talking.
I will.
Those sound awesome, and just the thought of being able to I work remotely from this building here in Houston where we worked at, and we're about to move to another one. But I got to work on the Impact Hub in Mexico City, and it was in a beautiful part of town. Great food, great street vendors, beautiful weather. Windows were open the whole time. But I can't even imagine working out of a castle overlooking the sea. Like, that's just not even. It's not even like the American lexicon. So, all right. So let's shift gears a little bit. I want to hear. Tell me, you've had the experience of meeting startup founders here in the U.S. I think you and your team, your group, got to go to Silicon Valley and Austin for a little bit and kind of see those places. Explain to me some of the differences that you see in maybe culture and personality and mindset between kind of startups in the US versus startups in Italy and the EU. Not an easy question, but
no. I, on the contrary, I believe that it's pretty easy. I met extremely smart people on both sides of the ocean, let's say. The huge difference is that in the US, there is a culture for startups. You can see that it's something that has deep roots. And this basically is translated in the fact that when you, first of all, you have a very large network of VC funds, in general of investors, that really have in mind the mindset that they are giving to you money, but that this money could be loose. But this is because if this money will have the desired effect, this will mean an amazing growth for their portfolio, and that this is part of the game, because we are doing technology, innovation, and nothing is sure in this environment. In Europe in general, and more specifically in the southern part of Europe, so Italy, Spain, and so on, the idea of entrepreneurship is still very much linked to a more conservatory idea of company, of corporate, which is more connected to the idea that a corporate, to do something good, has to be extremely big. So that basically, let's translate this in a very practical context. If you go to an investor and you're telling him, hey there, I'm going to open a barbershop network. Can you lend me some money? They will run to lend you money because they understand what you are doing, even though it's not very much innovative or technological, but they know the need. If you are telling them, hey there, I'm going to build the next general artificial intelligence model, can you lend me some money? They will tell you, absolutely, I won't. While in the United States, it would be totally the other way around. This is my perception, at least.
Gotcha. Okay, so very kind of old school business of reliable, consistent.
Exactly. It's yes, you told a very keyword, which is sustainability. So an investor in Europe, on average, will be much happier if you, at the third year of the company, show them that you reached break even, even though you are not really growing that fast. While in the US, I believe that they will be much, much happier of seeing an amazing growth, even though you are far, far away from the financial sustainability. So this is the real difference that I saw in between US and EU. And to be completely honest, I believe that the US model is much, much better under the innovation aspect. Naturally, if we just talk about the financial sustainability, the EU one is more solid, I would say. But under the innovation aspect, the US one is so much stronger, so much stronger.
So I have two thoughts on that. Of one, I would be very curious now to see the track record of these different VCs that invest like this in Europe versus ones in the US, where I think even if you're like the best of the best in the US, you might have a 15 to 20% success rate. And the other 80, your money's just gone. Success is break even or more. And you might get, 5% of them break into the billions if you're the best, if you're like Andreessen Horowitz or, Reid Hoffman. But I would be very curious as to the returns of the VCs in Europe who are more on the sustainable side, and hey, you broke even, okay, now I'll invest a little bit, like you're basically guaranteed win. It might not be as fast or as big, but maybe over 20 years it might match the ones in the US. And as you were talking about that, it made me think, I wonder if the difference in opinion on investing is kind of a cultural thing. Because think about it, you talked about castles a second ago. Like in Europe, there are castles older than my country. So I wonder if maybe the culture of like moving fast and breaking things is just an American thing, and the culture of like sustainably brick by brick, slowly like making sure you accomplish the goal is more of the rest of the world, or European mindset. But like there's a reason why these castles have stood for hundreds of years, and maybe the Empire State Building was the tallest building in the world for a while. So it's just like, which one do you want? Do you want a castle or a skyscraper? And like, so neither are better or worse. But I would be very interested to kind of look at the returns of European versus American venture capitalists.
I just loved this item and this question. Regarding the data, I don't have them. We can work on that together. I would love that. But just to give you my opinion in this regards is that a good mix of these two models could be very, very profitable overall, because on one side it's very important to me to preserve what's good about the past, but you also have to look forward and see what's coming next. And it is in these regards that the European Union is doing so bad. In fact, if you think about it, think at all the technological companies around the world. I mean, the relevant ones, not the small software development company. There is basically no European huge technology company. The only one that, I mean, has some sense is SAP. I don't know if you know it or not. It's they build ERPs. They are the competitors of Microsoft Dynamics, but it's really the only big technological European company. It's the only one. And if you think about startups, the only huge startup in the technological environment that might come to your mind, it's Spotify. We don't have others. All the others are coming from mainly the US or China, basically. Something from India. And this is kind of absurd, as when we were in the 80s, there was kind of a good balance in between the innovative corporates that were based in Europe and in the US. We totally lost this comparability, I would say, in just 40 years.
I want to stick on this point and talk about it for a second. When I was in Mexico, I got to talk to a few founders there, and we talked about the kind of culture and government and different factors that may either make a startup community or may hurt or hinder a startup community. So I'd like to hear your opinion, one, on Europe as a whole, but two, specifically in Italy. What are some of the key factors that you think are missing to help build a startup community or a culture of entrepreneurship? And just to kind of buy you a little bit more time to think about it, one of the examples we had in Mexico City was, it's very, very common for people to be small business entrepreneurs, where they'll open a small restaurant, husband and wife restaurant. They'll open a shoe repair shop. They'll open all these different little services, and it'd be a husband, a wife, their kids, and they'll run a family business. And that's very common in Mexico. What hasn't happened is that shift over to the kind of technological scale up. Something, if I want to build one restaurant and then maybe open a second one, sure, but the idea of opening the next McDonald's, scaling it to 10,000 restaurants doesn't even register. So I'll pass it back to you. I'd like to hear your thoughts on what do you think some of the challenges that Europe and Italy specifically are facing when it comes to building a more tech or entrepreneurial community.
I would say that you could just do a good copy and paste about the Mexican situation on the European one. Naturally, there are a lot of differences. but these differences are mainly on the overall economical development of the two areas. I mean, still EU is doing pretty good overall, but when it comes to the size of the companies and the technological footprint, I believe that we are not that distant. Again, this is different. This differs from country to country in the EU, but in general, this beauty of the small company, of the small thing, is something that we really are. I don't know how to say. So concerned about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And this, as you mentioned, makes us kind of blind on the bigger image that a brand could become really a global one, really a market leader. And this is something very much in line with what we were talking about previously. So we don't have really European huge corporates, especially in tech. Overall, the S&P 500 counts so few European companies, and so much fewer than just 20 years ago. So I would say that the issue is double, and is that we have this love for the small company, and this is something very cultural, I believe. So each entrepreneur in Europe, on average, prefers to have their own business managed the way they prefer than to really make a huge merger and acquisitions activity and to build giants. But when, in a few cases, this happens, we are able to do very good things. Think at the LVMH group of Bernardano.
Yep.
That's a very good example.
He just got to number 3 or 4 like wealthiest people on the planet, right?
Yes, 2.
Hey,
it has been first for some time, so that's a good example.
Yeah.
Again, it's not something technological, and that's the issue.
Yeah,
but regarding the old business, we could do the same thing for so many other fields and sectors in Europe, but we have this extreme love for the independent, smaller company than for the bigger group. And another very good metric about this is the stock market. So stock market in EU and US, I mean, it's something like this, although the real economy is distant, but not that distant, you know what I mean? So companies don't go public even when they absolutely could go public. Think about Ferrero, the Italian company which is making Nutella and so many other food stuff. They are huge. Almost $100 billion in overall, let's say, revenues, but they are not public.
They're a private company. Okay.
They're a private company.
I would have thought, because Nutella is such a huge brand around the world, I would have thought easily it would have been a public company, because you think of the American food brands, and they're all Kellogg's and all the others. They're all big public companies. I wonder if that would be more of a tax situation, if it's taxed differently, or if it's better to stay private, or I don't know. I guess, hey, if you got $100 billion private company, why would you need to go public? But yeah,
I guess that it's a mix of things, but culture is a really relevant one. Think also at companies like, I mean, I know better the Italians one, but this stands as well for Spanish, German, and French. French are better at this. Think at Barilla, the pasta one, something close to $5 billion in revenues, but still they are a big company. As much as for Armani, the very famous leather and clothes brand, even Armani is huge, and they never thought of going public or anything close to that, or neither to aggregate, make mergers and acquisitions. Well, that could have been easily done. I mean, this is just my opinion, but it's a cultural thing. This is what I mean. And for sure, it has its pros and its cons, but overall, as a continent, it's producing in the long term much more cons than pros, I believe.
I like it. All right, I don't want to take up too much of your time. We'll wrap up with this. I want to hear specifically about Italy and startups there. If I'm a founder and I want to go and meet with startup founders in Italy, which city do I go to, and where should I start hanging out? What kind of bars should I go to meet different founders?
I would say that Milan is the main startup hub in Italy. Torino is growing pretty well. So Rome is third, I would say. And overall, the area of Isola in Milan is growing pretty well under this.
Isola's it's a part of Milan?
Yeah, exactly. It's a part of Milan. Yeah.
Gotcha.
There isn't really just one bar, I would say. But there is a kind of spot within Isola. I don't remember the exact name. It's a co-working space where a lot of startups go. Yeah.
Nice. All right. Then, yeah, send that to me. We'll put it up here. Last kind of question. We came up with this example in Mexico of, to build a good startup community, you kind of need like a cake. You need all these different ingredients. We talked about venture capital. We talked about culture. We talked about, a few entrepreneurs, willing to go and do it. One of the big things that I think we overlook is the universities. What sort of universities are in Milan or Rome or around that kind of feed into this? When you were here in the US, you got to see Rice and U of H and UT. And I think the best example is Stanford out in Silicon Valley that just kind of feeds these startups their talent. So what sort of universities and programs are in Italy that are helping entrepreneurs there?
So I believe that the two best universities in this field are Bocconi University, which is a pretty famous business university, and Politecnico of Milan, which is an engineering university. So a more technical one. They're really pushing, but I believe that what we are missing here are mainly two things. The first one, again, is cultural, and is making younger people believe that doing a startup is something that can bring you great value from an economical point of view. We still have very much the idea that if you want to make money, you gotta get into finance, into a great bank, into a great fund. While I believe that there was a very interesting statistics about that a university in the US, I can't remember exactly if it was Stanford or the MIT, 80% of the students thought that if they wanted to make money, they had to start their own startups. While if you would run the same question, even in a very advanced Italian university, the answer would be like 90%. I have to go working for a huge company, especially in the financial field. So really, a very little few younger students and people think that doing startup is something really profitable. So this is culture in the first one. And in this regard, we don't really have so many success cases. While in the US you have so many, in Italy we don't have that many cases, in Europe in general. So this is something that is relevant from a cultural point of view. The second thing, again, is the investor area. So the capital markets, we are really lacking under this point of view.
Awesome. Well, man, I don't want to take up too much of your time. This has been great. I've learned a lot.
I love this,
yeah, I'd hopefully next year I can schedule. I keep wanting to come to Europe for like an Oktoberfest and just see all of it. I'm a big history. I know Oktoberfest is in Germany, but I'm a big history buff, and I want to kind of explore everything from like Sicily up to Rome, up to Germany, France, like everything. But that in itself, I got two friends who kind of just did it, and I know I would have to take at least like 2 to 3 months just to explore everything I want to see. So hopefully next year I can do that, and if I can meet some founders along the way, even better. So
please just give me a phone call when you're coming, and we will make sure of eating. Absolutely.
I'm gonna eat so much pasta, but awesome, man. Thank you for doing this, and
thank you very much. Bye.